Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will call the Missoula City Council meeting of July 25th, 2016 to order. If you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. And please let the record note that with the exception of Ms. Bentley and Mr. Wells, all council members are present this evening. We have minutes for the meeting of July 18th. Without objection, they'll stand approved. Done. We will move on to our schedule of committee meetings. Ms. Rabine?
Thanks, Mariangan. We have kind of a full slate of committee meetings on this coming Wednesday. Let's see. Today we had a Parks and Conservation tour that met from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We announced that last Friday. Budget Committee, the whole, meets from 9:30 till 10:35 on this coming Wednesday, the 27th of July. The Land Use and Planning Committee is going to pull a double shift. The first meeting is from 10:40 to 11:10. And the Administration and Finance Committee follows that from 11:15 to 11:40. Committee of the Whole will meet from 11:45 to 12 o'clock. Budget Committee was also pulling a double shift, and they will meet from 1 o'clock to 2:55 in the afternoon. Land Use and Planning will round out the day from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and that is when they're going to be discussing the Mercantile project.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any changes to the committee schedule this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items not elsewhere on the agenda this evening. Mr. Stevens.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Stevens. I live at 123 Saranac Drive. The Mercantile meeting last Wednesday provided an interesting and revealing contrast in attitudes and expectations. The council had made it quite clear the previous Wednesday that they wanted to talk with Mr. Holleran about facade preservation and restoration as part of a new building project. Mr. Holleran showed up and gave a retread presentation on an entirely new building. When council expressed concern that facade preservation was not being discussed, Mr. Holleran went on the offensive, stating that if facade preservation was to be discussed, then the meeting could be over in 2 minutes because it wasn't a topic he wanted to discuss. He went on to state that the project was at a tipping point. Of course, these statements are calculated to intimidate and tip the council over to acquiescence. In sharp contrast, a respected local engineer with extensive experience in historic facade restoration testified that the brick had been tested and that the facade could be preserved at considerably less expense than the developer had claimed. This was barely mentioned in the Missoulian report the next day, and the Missoulian also failed to report at all on positive comments from Preserve Historic Missoula and the State Historic Preservation Commission. Ellen Buchanan of the MRA testified that up to $3 million could be used for site improvements and facade preservation on the project. Money that could be spent to preserve the old facade cannot be used to construct a new facade in spite of what the Missoulian intimated. In addition, statements from the engineer indicate that it would not take $3 million to stabilize and preserve the existing facade. None of this is news that Homebase wants to hear. Preservationists make a major compromise when they agree to support a project that retains only the historic facade. This is something that can clearly be done, and Homebase needs to reciprocate if this project is to move forward in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Any other general public comment this evening? Mr. Geary?
Daniel Geary, excuse me, Ward 1. Very generally, I was just given 37 more signatures gathered, not by eye, on Saturday. And this surveyor asked if they would check if they would like to preserve the facade only or the whole building. I just received these on a quick visual analysis. It's dominantly for the whole building. So the people are still stopping on busy Saturdays with arms full of kale to voice their opinion. I just briefly tonight thought I've been on the street about 4 Saturdays this summer. I'm not a dues-paying member of any group. I do not represent them. And I just kind of remembered and wrote down some of the questions, and so I feel I can be a gatherer for you all. The top 2 questions are, I voted for John 3 times. Why would he do this? And why is the Missoulian so biased? But I'll move on. And some of them aren't about the Merc. I don't want to build another parking garage. If they bulldoze the Merc, where will the hotel staff and guests park? Out of the blue, is Peter Lambros involved in the library land swap? Did City Council feel coerced into pulling the rug from under Historic Preservation Commission? How many City Council members know who K. Ross Toole is, have ever even read a book or taken a course in Montana history? Is the chairperson of LUP neutral? And it's disappointing, this is my second testimony where Ms. Bentley has not been here and I can seldom attend the land use planning meeting. Is it true the city wants the land the senior center is on to build another parking garage? $40,000 for a feasibility study in combining the senior center and the international school is a lot to go to an out-of-town group. Could not 5 MBA students at the university do this same study? Why didn't the city council representatives hold ward discussions about the Merc? Why don't they answer emails about the Merc? Is it true the Chamber of Commerce misrepresented the results of their survey and really the no votes won? Is it true Home Base has never even attempted a renovation? Is it true that in Bozeman, public record shows that Mr. Halloran did a bait and switch on a project proposed and ended up with something that, and I quote, looks like it should be out by the interstate? How will Missoula protect itself from a bait and switch? Was the assault charge against Mr. Halloran in Washington against someone who disagreed with the project? Should I be afraid to attending the LUP meeting? Is the LUP chair even listening, ironically? And then the last one I'll end on is, I think he was about 12 years old. If the score is 3,000 to 500, didn't the Missoula Mercs beat the Bozeman Bulldozers? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Any other general public comment this evening? Mr. So.
Good evening. My name is Suzette Juzo. I'm a homeowner in Missoula, City of Missoula, and I'm just here tonight to speak about the Mercantile. I would really love us to work together as a community to save this historic landmark, and I too would consider a compromise. And so I'm looking forward to Wednesday's meeting when a compromise will come forward. I did attend the MRA meeting on Thursday, and a couple of items there were of interest to me. One of them was the building design standards consultant, which I am fully supportive of, which Bozeman happens to have, but we don't. And so I'm totally in favor of that initiative, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. And I entirely support this. The question I have is how actually can that position serve our community in really enforcing design standards or neighborhood plans when it comes to design, because we know that in 2015 Home Base was submitted a proposal for a development project in historic downtown Bozeman on East Menden Hills, and he went back in April of 2015 with the revised document, which it was already under construction. There was no way to stop that construction, and so although design standards were in place, apparently there was no way to really hold the developer responsible for that that project. So I just kind of want to, I fully support this position, but I also kind of hope that we can actually put some teeth in it and see how we can really work together as a community with our neighborhood associations, with our downtown plans, with our growth policy plans that do speak to historic nature of our community, that we, in fact, this position will somehow help us consider developments as they come through in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. So. Any other public comment on items not elsewhere on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, items on that consent agenda were approved unanimously in council committees. We save a little time on Mondays by reviewing these items as a package. Ms. Rabine will read the list of consent agenda items aloud, so folks in the audience and those at home will know what we're considering, and we'll take a public comment on those items before we vote. Ms. Rabine.
Thanks. We have 9 items on tonight's consent agenda, and the first, as always, are the city's accounts payable, and we call them claims here at the city. So that item is to approve claims in the amount of $2,298,534.35 for checks that are dated tomorrow, July 26, 2016. Number 2 is to adopt a resolution relating to Margaret Street, Mount to Strand curb and sidewalk improvements, which is project number 15-016 of the city's sidewalk, curb, gutter, and alley approach program, approving the final ordering in of those improvements. Number 3 also is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the Territorial Landworks Incorporated Engineering Services Agreement Amendment Number 1 for the Margaret Phase 2 Strand to Kensington Avenue curb and sidewalk project in an amount not to exceed $41,022. And number 4 is also about that project, and it's to award the bid for curb and sidewalk improvements for project 15-016, Phase 1, Margaret Street, Mount to Strand, to H&M Concrete LLC for a sum of $265,407.49, and authorize the return of bid bonds. Number 5 is to award the base bid for construction of project number 14-025, which is the Missoula Art Park, which is located on the 100 block of East Pine Street, downtown to Terabella Incorporated of Spokane, Washington, in the sum of $668,006.32, and authorize the return of bid bonds. Number 6 is to confirm the mayor's appointment of Scott Stearns as the large properties representative to the Business Improvement District Board, also known as the BID, for a term that begins immediately and expires on May 31st of 2020. Number 7 is to approve and authorize the mayor, this is a long one, to sign the Home Investment Partnerships Award Grant Agreements, and that's also known as the Home Funds. The first is with the District 11 Human Resource Council in an amount not to exceed $50,000 for tenant-based rental assistance. The next one is to the Women's Opportunity and Resource Development, which is also known as WORD, in an amount not to exceed $50,000 for tenant-based rental assistance. And with North Missoula Community Development Corporation, or the NMCDC, in an amount not to exceed $245,000 for an affordable housing project called Lee Gordon Place, and the Home Agreement Amendment with Homeward, for up to $100,000 for the Sweetgrass Commons project. Number 8 is also long, and it is to, they're all related to CDBG or Community Development Block Grant Awards. It's to approve and authorize the mayor to sign those agreements with following agencies as approved by the City Council in the 2016 Action Plan on May 9th of 2016. The first is to Garden City Harvest in the amount of $12,000. Homeward in the amount of $14,000, not $14. I see there's a typo on the agenda. It looks like Missoula Aging Services in the amount of $12,000, the Missoula Food Bank in the amount of $10,800, the North Missoula Community Development Corporation, or the NMCDC, in the amount of $305,000, the Regional Access Mobility Program, also called RAMP, in the amount of $35,000, and to WORD, Women's Opportunity Resource Development, in the amount of $12,000, and finally to the YWCA of Missoula in the amount of $18,000. And finally, number 9 is to set a public hearing for August 8th on 2016 on a resolution levying a special assessment and tax on the lots, pieces, and parcels of land which are situated within Street Maintenance District Number 1, which is generally located in downtown area, of the city of Missoula, Montana, in the amount of $60,188 for the purpose of defraying the cost of flushing or street sweeping and removing rubbish or garbage from the streets and avenues in the district during fiscal year 2017.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rabine. I suspect there is at least one abstention here. Yeah. Mr. Von Lossberg?
I don't think I was the one, but were you guessing me? I'm going to stand on number 8. My wife works at Garden City Harvest, but I'm impressed if you guessed that.
And there might be 2. Ms. West?
I had recused myself during the vote since I work for the NMCDC.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Wilkins?
I'd like to separate number 5 out, please. Can I speak to it?
Yeah, we can do that. Let's do it when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah. Any public comment on any of the items on the consent agenda this evening? All right. With that, we will have a roll call vote, and you may need to help me, Ms. Rabine, on items 1 through. Mr. Wilkins, what was your issue?
1 through
Okay.
4 and 6 through 9, and with a note that.
Perfect. Okay. So on those items, we'll have a roll call vote.
Okay. Armstrong. Armstrong votes yes. Cares. Cares votes yes. DeBari. DeBari votes yes. Hedall. Hedall votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Jones. Jones votes yes. Marler. Marler votes yes. Von Lossberg. And Von Lossberg votes yes and abstains on item number 8. West. West votes yes. And Wilkins. Wilkins votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
Thank you. That is approved. And on the separated item, Mr. Wilkins.
So this is the award debates via the construction for the art park. And I was disappointed that a local contractor didn't get this. The money's going to go out to Spokane. And I just can't say yes on something like that. So,
Okay. Further discussion?
my reading.
Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
On item number 5 of the consent agenda, Cares. Cares votes yes. DeBari. DeBari votes yes. Hedall. Hedall votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. And Jones. Jones votes yes. Marler. Marler votes yes. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. West. West votes yes. Wilkins. Wilkins votes no. Armstrong. Armstrong votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
And all items on the consent agenda were approved. We'll move on to comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum. I'm unaware of any of those this evening. We do have a couple of public hearings this evening. State law and our own council rules provide for guidelines on inviting comment on a variety of issues in a formal way. Following a staff report on each of these, the council and I will invite comment. Council typically votes on the same evening as a public hearing unless a council member requests that it be returned to committee for further consideration. Our first public hearing this evening is on a conditional use request at 1615 Wyoming. That's West Side Lanes for an enterprise commercial conditional use. Our staff report comes from comes from Mr. Larson this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Drew Larson, City Staff with Development Services. And tonight we are discussing a request from Norman Carey, represented by Aaron Hanks of Gavin Hanks Architects, for a conditional use expansion of the existing enterprise commercial use West Side Lanes and Fun Center located at 1615 Wyoming. The subject property, represented up here by the red star, is located 1 block west of Russell Street along Wyoming Street, and the property is within the City of Missoula Ward 6 and the River Road Neighborhood Council. The property is zoned C2-4 Community Commercial and is located within the South Side Riverfront Neighborhood Character Overlay. The Our Missoula 2035 City Growth Policy recommends a land use designation of community mixed use, which encourages basic employment and services necessary for vibrant communities. The subject property currently contains the enterprise commercial use, West Side Lanes and Fun Center, and is accessed from North Catlin Street and Wyoming Street, which are both classified as local collectors. The enterprise commercial use standards require traffic impact analysis when the use is not located on an arterial street, and a traffic impact analysis was not submitted with the conditional use application. In addition to that, Title 20 states that the city engineer may require a traffic study for proposed development that generates 200 or more weekday vehicle trips. The estimated weekday trip generation is 360 trips per day. So staff has recommended condition of approval number 4, requiring the applicants to prepare a traffic impact analysis prior to building permit approval and to install any required mitigation prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So West Side Lane currently occupies a majority of the subject property, which also contains a casino and tavern. The property has 160 off-street parking spaces, which is what their current requirement is, batting cages, and a putting course. The parking placement is currently non-conforming to both the enterprise commercial use standards and the Southside Riverfront overlay. However, the proposed expansion will not increase the nonconformity because the majority of the new parking stalls will cover less than 50% of the parcel frontage. So all of the parking here in the front is currently non-conforming, but all of the new additions, so on another one there'll be a future addition here, and all the parking, at least 50% will be located to the side of the building for the new addition. So just a couple quick photos. This is looking southwest along Wyoming Street. And then this one is at the corner or the intersection of North Catlin and Wyoming Street as well. So the applicants propose to construct a new 10,800 square foot addition to house an additional 10 bowling lanes, additional bathrooms, and a new lobby. So the 10 new bowling lanes will be in line with the existing bowling lanes, and so the building actually needs to be in line with the existing building. The lobby will be up here, and as well as some ADA bathrooms there. Required parking for bowling alleys is 4 off-street parking spaces per 1 bowling lane. The new addition requires an additional 40 off-street parking spaces, and the applicants propose 204, including 4 ADA accessible spaces. However, Title 12 requires 7 ADA spaces for 200 parking spaces required. So recommended condition of approval number 2 requires the applicants to revise the site plan to provide at least 7 ADA accessible spaces. Bicycle parking is 1 bicycle space per 10 motor vehicles provided, or 10 motor vehicle spaces provided. The applicants propose to add 4 bicycle spaces along with the new 40 vehicle spaces required for the proposed development. However, the site will contain 204, minus maybe a few for the ADA parking that will need to be added, which will require 20 short-term bicycle parking spaces and is a recommended condition of approval number 3. So landscaping, sites occupied with enterprise commercial uses require 20% of general on-site landscaping. And this is calculated by looking at the disturbance area. So any deficiencies in the existing is not required. So the disturbance area is kind of outlined here in red, which is 87,492 square feet. So 20% of that is 17,498. And per the site plan, they are going to be adding 18,059 square feet, which includes street frontage landscaping here, perimeter parking lot landscaping, buffering between the residential and the trail here, as well as landscape islands. The proposed site plan meets all applicable portions of Title 20, including the enterprise commercial standards and the Southside Riverfront neighborhood character overlay as amended by the recommended conditions of approval. Staff received comment from Parks and Recreation stating that the proposed project will be required to install boulevard trees along Wyoming and Catlin Street rights-of-way. So staff has recommended condition of approval number 6, requiring the applicants to submit a boulevard tree planting and maintenance plan with the building permit and to install those prior to the certificate of occupancy. In addition, during the Land Use and Planning Committee last Wednesday, July 20th, council members were concerned regarding the cigarette smokers on the sidewalks in front of the tavern and casino, which the tavern and casino are right here, and the entrance is right there. And so it often results in non-smokers visiting the site to walk through seas of smoke to get into the entrance. And so staff has prepared recommended condition of approval number 7, which was sent out in the memo following Land Use and Planning Committee that prohibits smoking on the east facade only. So they would post signage here to provide non-smokers a safe pedestrian access based on the factors to be considered by council. So the enterprise commercial use standards require the submission of an internal pedestrian circulation plan demonstrating unobstructed connections and clearly defined pedestrian vehicle areas. The provided circulation plan provides a new ADA accessible route from Wyoming Street, which is here, which currently does not exist. All sidewalks currently meet the EC standards, which are at least 8 feet. There will be 8-foot sidewalk along the new addition, which ties into the existing. There will be 10-foot 6 to accommodate vehicle parking overhang here on the east facade, as well as a 7-foot sidewalk on the south. So Mountain Line staff, during the agency commented the project will be poorly served by the existing transit infrastructure, and the estimated increase in vehicular trips will adversely affect operations. Mountain Line recommended connecting the Milwaukee Trail to the subject property to provide users of the business direct access from the property to the nearest bus stop at the Milwaukee and Russell intersection right next to Home Resource. In addition, the bicycle pedestrian coordinator also recommended connection to the Milwaukee Trail. So staff has recommended condition of approval number 5, requiring the applicant to revise the site plan prior to building permit to provide a connection on the south end. There's a possible connection to trail system here. It'll be somewhere in that, and they'll work with Parks and Rec and the bicycle pedestrian coordinator to provide that access. The enterprise commercial use and building specific standards require 4 of the 6 building design alternatives on building walls that contain public building entrances in order to reduce the apparent bulk and visual impact of the building. Both the east and north facades of the proposed addition contain a public entrance. So for these, the applicants propose 20% glazing on the north facade, facade projections, and color and material variation to meet 4 of the 6 on the north side. And similar to the north facade, the applicants propose facade projections, color and material variation, and the reuse of the existing canopy on the east side. So this canopy will be moved and will service the new entrance. We've got corrugated metal here. I believe it's a darker colored stucco. I've got a picture here in a second. And then these will be projections that line the building here. So you can kind of see it here. There's maybe a little projection here, but there's a colored material variation all along there as well, or along the newest addition. And so that will be continued with the new addition. So with that, staff recommends the council approve the conditional use subject to the 7 recommended conditions of approval and based on the site plans and conditional use material provided for review. Thank you, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. On behalf of applicant, Mr. Hanks.
My name is Aaron Hanks with Gavin Hanks Architects. I'm here on behalf of the applicant from Westside Lanes. I think I don't really need to go through any more of the scope of the project. I think Drew did a pretty good job of that. So I would just say I am certainly available to answer questions about the proposal or the design. And I'm not sure if the owner would care to do that too, but.
Mr. Carey, anything you'd like to add at this time?
Hi, I'm Norman Carey, the owner of Westside Lanes. I don't really have too much to say. I've said a lot on Wednesday, and I think it's pretty well come out tonight. And, we're putting so many restrictions on here, there's no way I can amortize this project. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing as much for the city of Missoula as I'm doing it for myself. I'm much too old to be going into a thing like this, and I thought it'd be good for the city of Missoula, but I have got some recent pricing on the parking lot, and with all the things required, it doesn't look favorable, but I'll await your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone else care to comment on the conditional use request before the council? All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions from council members? Mr. Wilkins?
For Drew, I got a couple questions. So, the first one, the traffic study. Why is this kicking in a traffic study?
So it's a recommended condition of approval. In Title 20, it states that if the city engineer may require a traffic impact analysis prepared if it generates 200 or more trips a day. This one is generating 360, and so we recommend it as a condition of approval.
And the boulevard sidewalk, is there already a boulevard sidewalk on Wyoming?
There is. There's a 5-foot sidewalk on Wyoming. Let me get up to it. So you can kind of see it here. So there's this actual boulevard where the power lines are, but then on the site plan as well, they have ample room between the sidewalk and property line to also get trees in as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I have Ms. Armstrong.
I'd like to amend the conditions. I'd like to strike number 4.
Nope. Questions? Yeah. Ms. Karras.
Drew, could you discuss possible results from the traffic study? Like what sort of mitigation options may come out of that?
So I had brief conversations with Kevin Slovart, the city engineer. He spoke of potential bulb outs at Wyoming and Catlin, possibly improved bus shelter at the home resource, but likely that the connection to the trail would help mitigate those, and as well as the short-term bicycle parking.
May I keep asking questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear which is the main entrance? Could you show on slide, I think it's 8 or 9, 10. One more.
One more.
Yeah. Do you know which one is the main entrance?
So both the east and north. So this entrance here is to serve mostly the casino and tavern. So casino here and tavern use here. This is right now the main entrance. This is where you rent bowling shoes, that type of stuff. I know that Norman has talked about having some interior alterations as well, and so that may change to the east main entrance. I'm not really sure, but
I think that's interesting. I'll wait for my comments. My last question is for the owner. I wasn't here on Wednesday. I was out of town, so I apologize for not catching your comments then. But are there certain conditions that you would like us to strike? Could you recap that for us now?
Mr. Carey or Mr. Hanks?
This might be a two-part answer, I guess. I'll do my part. Working with Norm, I think that he had concerns, I think most of all about the traffic impact study. I think, Norm can kind of explain what his feelings are, what his intentions are, but we believe that really the new food bank that's being constructed kitty corner across Wyoming is probably triggering more of the traffic issues and I think than probably the bowling alley. So I think Norm probably felt like the burden of this shouldn't fall on him, but we're certainly willing to explore the possibility of a connection to the trail if that's something that would help mitigate that, and we're willing to work with city engineering to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Carey, anything you'd like to add?
I might also add before he gets here, I have talked to MRA staff, and we are exploring the possibility of their assistance to help with some of the landscaping requirements. So we'll certainly investigate that if that is approved as one of the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanks. Mr. Carey?
Well, he's pretty well spelled out the items, the costs of the sidewalks, and I did put all the sidewalks and curbs in when I did the earlier remodel back in 2005 and 6, all the way around the project. But when I started getting pricing the last few days on the main parking lot with the added sidewalks going to the south and the wider sidewalks required around the building, I'm figuring out about $6,000 a added parking spot. and that's pretty hard to amortize. So I will, after your decision, go through and make a decision whether we can do it or whether we can't. You know, the more things you add, the higher the costs go. So, and I think everybody knows the costs of business today. So, I just appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Ms. Karras? All right. With that, Mr. DeBari, questions?
This is for Mr. Larson. When we met at LUP on Wednesday, we had a discussion about the traffic impact study, and it sounded to me, if I remember correctly, that there was perhaps some flexibility in the timing of such a study, or an opportunity to address perhaps the impacts of this as well as the impacts associated with the food bank in totality, rather than having to do two of them or having the burden fall to any one particular entity. And I'm wondering if you could talk about if there are such options available.
You know, I'm not terribly familiar with traffic impact analysis and those studies. The city engineering department looks at those more frequently. Based on, just for this project alone, the 360 extra trips a day is what we based our recommendation off of. You know, as far as working with the food bank, I wouldn't see any issue with that, but it's beyond my scope. I apologize. I don't know.
And I have Ms. West and Ms. Jones and Ms. Marler.
I had the same question as John, so okay. I'll pass.
Ms. Jones?
Kind of a variation on John's question, but I'm wondering, it seems like that entire area, there's a huge amount of growth going on right now from what I see as I drive by just on Russell, or if I go to the Good Food Store, just a lot of building. Do we ever have, I don't know, combined traffic studies from various entities? And then also, food bank's a nonprofit. Do they participate in these, or are nonprofits in a separate category? Do you know?
I don't know. Sorry.
And Ms. Marler?
I just had a question about the traffic impact analysis. Can you explain what it is? Is this something that development services does and then bills to the client, or do they have to have a consulting firm do it independently and submit that, or is it just like a checklist, or what? Just what is it?
Mr. Larson?
The few traffic impact analyses that I've seen are submitted by the developer. They've been anywhere from 1 page to 20. The Southgate Mall traffic impact analysis was, I think, 80 pages. It was quite significant. In my limited experience with those, it's been the developer that prepares and pays for that.
Ms. Marler?
Is it a standard format, or I mean, what is it? Is it dictated by state law, or it just says tell us about the traffic impacts?
Mostly just traffic impacts and whether or not any mitigation is warranted. You know, with the Southgate Mall, they recommended a number of things for mitigation. You know, improved bicycle paths, you know, better pedestrian facilities at the light. That one is a much more significant impact on the community, that new roadway. And this one, you know, for other development, I've seen just 1 page papers where it says this is based on the Institute of, it's the ITE chip generation. It's got some long engineering name to it. I really couldn't say what it would look like in this situation.
Thanks.
Ms. Marler? I have Ms. Karras, Ms. Hedall.
Were there any questions about keeping the 2 existing entrances on Wyoming? Has that come up? That topic come up at all?
The vehicle entrances?
Yes.
There's actually only 1 right now on Wyoming. This is the new, so there'd be 2 entrances on Wyoming now.
And has anyone talked about that at all?
I've had no questions.
Okay, that's sufficient. Thanks.
Ms. Hedall?
In my past experience with the city, if a traffic study was ordered and the city was going to perform a traffic study, it could be upwards of $40,000. So my question, I guess, is, would that be an accurate estimate for a private entity as well? Do you have any idea what these cost?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Further questions? Mr. DeBari.
So just so I'm clear about the traffic part of this, the applicant may have to pay for and conduct a traffic impact analysis, and then they may also be on the hook for contributing to or providing those mitigation activities as well, correct? So
Yes.
it could be two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Further questions? All right, seeing none, in Ms. Bentley's absence, Mr. DeBari.
So I move to approve the West Side Lanes and Fun Center enterprise commercial use in the C2-4 community commercial /NC-SR Southside Riverfront Neighborhood Character Overlay Zoning District at 1615 Wyoming, in accordance with the Missoula City Zoning Ordinance Title 20, Sections 2010-020D, 2040-050, and 2085-070, based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the 7 conditions of approval described in this evening's presentation.
Mr. DeBari's motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Wilkins?
I'd like to put hopefully a friendly amendment in, do away with number 4, the traffic study.
Okay. Mr. DeBari?
I think I'd like to nuance that a little bit if possible. Is this the time to do that, or?
It's the time to nuance, yes.
So I am sympathetic with Mr. Wilkins and others about the burden of the traffic impact study falling specifically on this property owner, given that there's a bunch of things happening in the area. And so I would like to explore the opportunity for a traffic study to be shared with the food bank, and doing it in conjunction with the food bank perhaps, and to ensure that whatever mitigation activities need to take place are being adequately and equitably split amongst those entities causing the impact. And that's kind of a lot of words, but I don't know if that's an amendment or just an expression of my interest.
Actually, it's a lot of words. It's not unreasonable. What I would suggest to the council this evening is that as a function of the fact that we're going to signalize Wyoming Street, that the impacts are what they are, that there is currently a 4-way stop, I would suggest that you just bag the traffic impact study and move on. That's just me.
So then I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. I'm sorry? No, but Mr. Wilkins' amendment was let it go, right?
You're asking me to add a friendly amendment that John spoke? Is that
No, your amendment was to do away with number 4, which was the traffic impact
Right.
study. And if
keep to that.
Mr. DeBari is okay with that, then it's accepted. Mr.
Correct.
DeBari?
I am fine with that.
Mr. DeBari has accepted the friendly amendment, so we're having discussion on the motion as amended. Further discussion? Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. Briefly, I spent a lot of quality time in that establishment. Thank you for having it. I'm hopeful that the investment will go forward. I'm supportive of approving this with the amendment. I appreciate Mr. Wilkins bringing it up. I think we'll be just fine without the traffic study at this point. I appreciate the explanation from the mayor, and I'd urge my colleagues to support it.
Ms. Karras?
I too have spent a lot of time at West Side Lanes, mainly watching karaoke, but also bowling poorly. And I also will be.
How was the karaoke, though?
Well, I watch. Sometimes I sing Cher.
All right, fair enough.
I will also be supporting it as amended. A couple comments I'd like to make are in relation to Condition 2, accessible parking. This is mostly for Mr. Hanks's benefits. The city has a lot of good resources about the signage required that discusses both the fine that would be encouraged should someone park there unnecessarily, and also the widths necessary for both a regular accessible spot and a van accessible spot. With 200 to 300 spots, you need the 7 accessible parking spaces, 2 of which have to be van accessible. So I am glad that that was caught by staff, and I'm look forward to all of those spaces being included. Condition 5, the trail connection, I think, is a important condition, and I'm glad that hasn't been struck. I really have appreciated the way the owner has allowed those who live at Corso to use that strip of ground as a impromptu dog park, and I think that keeping even a trail there will keep connectivity good and also be beneficial for those dog owners. And then I think I'll stop there. I'll be supporting the motion.
Further discussion on the motion, Ms. Marlowe?
I'm going to support the motion as amended, and I know that some of the things like the street trees and sidewalk improvements are extra expense, but they're really important to the neighborhood, and that's why the MRA is willing to pony up money for those, because they're important for everybody. So I just want to encourage the applicant and staff to work together with the MRA to defray some of those costs. And I haven't been to West Side Lanes in a long time, but I had a good time last time I was there.
Mr. Jabari?
So I'd like to echo what Ms. Marler said about the street trees, and I think what Ms. Kerr said about the trail. I highly encourage the applicant to work with the MRA and to try to ensure that those things take place, but defray your costs to some degree and making that happen. And I think as a general comment, it would be, well, I guess I look forward to having a discussion about how we address parking in some of these commercial enterprises. This looks to me like a whole lot of parking, and maybe it's necessary, but it'd be good to review what we require in terms of parking to make sure it's not excessive. And I'll also be supporting the motion.
Further discussion?
So I want to just make a brief comment. Look at what this developer is going through and all the things that are added on to what he has to do. And I still hear in Missoula that developers are saying this is a hard town to build anything. And I think this is the prime example of that. So we need to start doing something to make our developers a little bit better than putting all these regulations on them.
Further discussion? All right, I will tell you that this is not a hard town to build things, and that what I hear from developers over and over again, since we've reorganized the Office of Planning and Grants, since we've instituted a new zoning code, and since we've leaned into being more customer friendly, this is a very good place to do business, and we still have a responsibility to deliver public good as a function of what we do. So, with that, I will suggest that we've had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, this is on the motion to approve the conditional use permit subject to the 6 conditions of approval and striking condition number 4. We'll start roll with Jabari. Jabari votes yes. Heddle. Heddle votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Jones. Jones votes yes. Marler. Marler votes yes. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. West. West votes yes. Wilkins. Wilkins votes yes. Armstrong. Armstrong votes yes. And Cares. Cares votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
And the motion is approved. We'll move on to our second public hearing, which is a continuation of our hearing on the FY 2017 budget. Anyone in the audience care to comment this evening on that budget? Seeing none, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Yeah. Oh, the Hill Way bonds. I'm completely apologetic, ladies and gentlemen. We will close the public hearing, however, on the, actually we'll continue the public hearing on the budget. we have Hillview Way bonds, which I forgot completely about because that's who I am. We have a resolution relating to the Hillview Way bonds, authorizing the issuance of those bonds and making certain that the findings with respect to the pledge of revolving fund of the city of Missoula as security, therefore, are appropriate. And we have a staff report this evening from Ms. Griffin.
Hi, Lee Griffin, City Finance. Sorry, the motion had probably more verbiage in there than was required. This is an informational item pursuant to Montana law when we issue tax-exempt bonds, SID bonds, sidewalk and curb bonds. We put 5% of the bond proceeds into the revolving fund. This is a bit of insurance in case the assessments that are levied against the city and property owners are not sufficient to pay the principal and interest on those bonds. City Council on June 27th approved a parameters resolution to sell those bonds, the tax-exempt bonds, to finance a portion of the Hillview Way reconstruction project, and we anticipate selling those within those parameters on Wednesday of this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Are there any comments from anyone in the audience with regard to these bonds? Questions from council? With that, no action is required this evening. Thank you very much. We will then move on, ladies and gentlemen, to communications from the mayor. I will pass this evening. We'll begin general comments from council members with Ms. Jones. Mr. Vari? Council comments? Yeah. Ms. Armstrong?
Actually, I'm gonna, now that I have my wits about me, I just wanted to make note of passing of a friend, actually. He was about our age, Mr. Mayor, and obviously way too early for someone to be passing away of anything, including an illness like he had to endure. So I just wanted to say to his family, pass along my condolences and wish them well.
Thank you. Ms. Armstrong? Mr. Hess? Mr. Wilkins? Yes. Ms. West? Ms. Cares?
I got back at 1 a.m. from a 10-day vacation, and I had a good time, but I love this town, and I'm so glad to be back among my peers. Thanks for having me. I thought council was really great today.
Mr. Von Lossberg, Ms. Hedall, and Ms. Marler. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move on to committee reports. We have none of those this evening, unless I'm missing one, which seems to be my thing tonight. No, we're good. We have no new business. Any additional items we referred? Seeing none of those, any miscellaneous communications, petitions, reports, or announcements? Seeing none of those at about 4 minutes to 8, ladies and gentlemen, I will thank you for your service, and we will be adjourned.